call to order this meeting of the Mercer County Board of Education. Mr. Booter, roll call, please.
Good evening. District 1, Amber Franceschi. Here. District 2, Larry Yeager. District 3, Billy Montgomery. Here. District 4, Cliff Pruitt. Here. District 5, Randy Phillips.
Here. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Pruitt makes the motion. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Montgomery, second. All in favor? Next will be our reports, and first up, the finance officer's report.
Still not on, but I'm loud, so it's okay. Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay. The general fund recap for July 2022, we had $5.7 million as our general fund cash balance as opposed to $5.5 million last year at the same time. Our overall revenue was relatively the same as the prior year. The receipts received in the year were 27% higher than last year at the same time. On the expense side, those were up 24% compared to last year at the same time. But the expenses in the month of July were right under $700,000, which is relatively low. But normally they range anywhere from like 1.5 to 1.8 in a normal month. And obviously the month of July is just a little bit different. So these numbers, when I tell you 24% on the expense side up, 27%, receipts are up. The months of July and August are always hit and miss on when payments are still coming in from the prior year sometimes. We're still closing that out. We're still making payments sometimes for things that happen in the month of June. So it's a little bit skewed there. We'll normally kind of get more normal where we're seeing that stuff in September and October. It kind of evens out that we normally at that point basically closed out everything from last year and then moved on to the next year. So, any questions? Thank you.
Good report. Thank you very much. Next, our personnel report. I think everybody's had a chance to view that. So we will go ahead and move on to the superintendent's report.
So a few things to report. First week of school went really well. A lot of excitement. Not only the first day of school, but also in the open houses that were well attended. I know we got a lot of principals here. And I think they would echo that at the open houses. There was a lot of excitement, not only with the kids, but the parents, the faculty members, staff members. Were all really excited. And I thought they went really well. With the first week of school, your first 3 days, you always worry about transportation, buses and parent drop-offs, and everybody likes to drop their kid off the first day, but hats off to Perry and his crew with the transportation, the bus team, of course, the administrators with the parent drop-off and pick-up. Everything went about as smooth as it could. It was much better than last year, so hats off to them for a job well done. The transportation piece the first 3 days of school. I was able to go to the parent pickups in the morning, each of the 4 days, each of the 4 schools, and then in the afternoon I did the bus dismissal because I wanted to see how it all operated at each school. It's a well-oiled machine to get all those kids, 2,700 of them, either in school or into a parent car or a bus after school. So it was great to see that was really well organized.
I was going to comment on the transportation. I was in your office the first day. I think they said that the last kid was dropped off around 5:45, which, considering the first day and a monsoon that came through right about let-out time, I think that was pretty solid. So great job by them. And we've got 3 of our principals here tonight. They look much more relaxed right now than they did the first day. So.
They look a lot drier than they were. But I've had 27 opening days, and that is the worst rain I have ever seen in a bus dismissal. It was Wednesday, but it was unbelievable. But that's what I told the staff. I sent them an email, and I said, the great thing, this is what a team is all about, because those staff members, they got out there, and I mean, they were soaked when they went home, and that's just, that's a team effort. Those are things that you got to do to make us be successful. The Superior Titan Award, we won't have a winner this month, it'll be for this month, it'll be at the September board meeting. So we'll start that up, we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance back next month with one of the kids leading us in that, but we'll start that next month. You'll see my PGP in the consent items. I chose standard 4 to focus on this year, which is human resource leadership. There's several areas we'll look at, and I listed those in there. But one of the biggest things I know working with Chantel and her group would be how to recruit and retain great staff members. That's one thing that we'll really focus on this year, especially just with the shortages around the state and the nation. I saw an article last night that said Florida was 8,000 teachers short on the first day of school yesterday. So for many of those, so it's not just in Kentucky, it's everywhere. Athletics bowl game, we got Saturday. You all are all invited to the bowl game. First game is at 5, and then we kick off against Tate's Creek at 8 o'clock. And that'll be at AJ Field on Saturday night. The athletic project update. I don't know if you wanted to chime in here, but I went down there last few days and talked to them. But as of today, everything's on time or maybe a day or two ahead of schedule, which is a great thing, especially with all the rain that we've had in the last couple of weeks. He said that's in part to that they're working 7 days a week, all Saturday and all day Sunday. I know many of y'all text me and said you've seen them over there Sunday and Saturdays, and they've been working around the clock to try to get that project completed on time. One thing we did find out is that they have, we had fiber cable down there already, so they're just going to reroute it because the 4-inch PVC pipe with fiber in it went right through where the now new baseball field is going to be. So they're just going to reroute it. I know the golf coach will get nice fiber at the golf complex or the golf storage shed, and then simulator, and then each press box will have it as well. And what that allows us to do is to have security cameras down there that Jerome and his crew can put in, install for us, allow us to have a secure new athletic complex. So in case we have anything we have to deal with, we can always run the cameras back down there also. So that's all I've got. Did y'all have anything else on the addition of the
just a comment that it's amazing how good construction is at utility locations. When they start digging, they can always find something. Never fails. But no, they're moving right along. I'm very happy with the progress. We're still talking with them about things that potentially even expedite it a little bit more. They're trying to I guess, plan in advance in case we do get any more Julys. The weather we got during July. So they're staying on top of it. We're working with them, talking to them basically daily, trying to, always look for things to expedite it or to save a little money here.
So speaking of utilities, one thing that, you learn things like that, but, and Mr. Yeager, Mr. Montgomery may know, but I think that they found one gas line which is off the road, Moberly Road, the same distance as the house that's up the hill there. So I don't know if there was a house there at one time, but there was a gas connection right there on our property there where the gravel is now, where they have the parking lot. So I don't know if there was a house there one day, but the things you run into, we didn't even know there was natural gas on our property, but there was.
I don't remember there being a house there.
So they must have just run that in case there was ever a house put right there beside that other house. It's interesting, but utilities, yeah, you find those things. Just like the fiber that we found that we didn't know was under the ground. So it's interesting. But no, it's a neat project, and I know you all have been by there, but the great news is that they're on schedule.
All right, sir, good report, thank you very much. We have no public participation appears this evening, so we will move on to the consent agenda. And everyone should have had a chance to look at that. I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to discuss or needs to discuss. I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss.
I would add
You mentioned
the 5I KMS visitor football bleacher surplus. What we'd like to do is the same thing we did with the buses that are bus bids there. We'll talk about it a little later. Is do the same thing. If somebody would like to put a bid in on the bleachers, then they can do that over the next month. But those will probably be scrapped. I don't think anybody would purchase those to use them someplace else because they're so old and out of code. So we just need to get rid of those bleachers. But if nobody wants to bid on it, we can get more money out of the scrap like we do with school buses, then we can dismantle them ourselves. It'll be a lot of work, but take those things apart. So that's the 5I.
Do you all have any questions about any items? Let's see. The KMSE meeting contract, what is that like?
Much like your all's board meeting agenda platform, we're going to do it for our site base. And it'll be posted on our district website. Site-based members will have access to it. We can upload the minutes, approve them. It's almost identical to what you're using here, but for site-based.
Okay.
I did notice in there that it was talking about if additional services were needed and someone had to come in to assist, would that come before the board as a separate item if you all needed someone to come in to help with because it's an hourly rate?
There is a training associated with it, but I believe it's that $500 cost that covers the training. So,
Okay. And if it were going to be anything additional, it would come back, or
Normally,
are we approving all of it?
the reason this one is on there is because there's a contract associated with it. That hourly rate is not a contract associated with it, so as long as their site-based approves it, because you all allocated funds to site-based, then that would be what would happen. Basically, the site-based would approve that they can bring someone in for an hourly rate for training or anything like that at that point, because that's not under contract.
Okay.
If no further discussion on the consent agenda items, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Montgomery makes the motion. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Francesca, second. All in favor? Action items for roll call vote. First up, 2022 tax rates.
So the board members, I sent you all this information probably 3 or 4 weeks ago when we first received our tax assessment from the Kentucky Department of Education. So the attachment to this one is just basically the information I give the board every single year as far as what the different options that the Kentucky Department of Education gives us in order to set those rates. A little bit of a change this year, and one of the attachments is a letter from the Kentucky Department of Education mentioning the need for hearings or recalls or anything like that. So you can see that attachment on there, and the fact that the change basically is, or the way that they're interpreting it, is that you no longer have to have a hearing before setting a rate as long as it's 4% or less. And by 4%, we're meaning 4% on the revenue, not the rate itself. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But if it's anything over that 4% increase in revenue rate, that is when you would have to have a hearing and could be recallable at that time. So we'll just go quickly through. I've spoken with a couple of you all individually about this. So our current rates as of, last fiscal year, we're 70.1 for property, real estate, and then 72 for personal property. So this first table here just shows you what we've done over the last 9 years. And over the last 9 years, our tax rate for real estate has increased 7.5 cents in that time. So if you look at it, it's 7.5 cents per $100 of assessed value. So if you have someone that has a $100,000 assessed home, so their home assesses with the PBA's office for $100,000, we're talking an increase of $75 over the last 9 years is what they've seen overall for the year. So you can compound that by, however much you want to at that time for any assessed values over and above that. So down below that, it just kind of tells you a quick overview of what our options are, what the Department of Education lays out for us, and what kind of revenue that would generate. So they're all kind of in the ballpark of each other. You're looking anywhere from 9.6 million up to 10.3, depending on which rate. The highest rate is that subsection 1 rate, and that would be subject to recall, and we would have had to have a hearing in order to set that one. Another one we would have had to have had a hearing for and would be subject to recall is if we kept the rate the same, due to the fact that that personal property rate, it goes down, but then that same rate for the real estate would end up, it goes up by 1.1 at that point in time compared to what it was last year, which is very minimal. But if we left it at 72 on personal property, because it decreases drastically with what that 4% increase in revenue would give us, that's why we, it'd be subject to recall at the time. It's much higher than that at that time. So keep in mind when the Kentucky Department of Education tells us that that's the kind of revenue we could receive, that's at a 100% collection rate. And that's if no other exemptions come through after the fact, meaning, someone comes and they qualify for some kind of exoneration on their assessment at that time. So just keep those things in mind as well. That's in a perfect world. And unfortunately, we've never had a 100% collection rate. So the next page up at the top is just some comparisons here so you can see what this means in comparison to the current rates, and then also what it has in there taking into consideration our nickels that we have here in our district. So if you're looking at basically the two rates that we can really look at tonight without a hearing, the compensating and the 4% increase in revenue, you're seeing that the compensating actually lowers the rates, and that would be a $25 savings per year on a $100,000 home for real estate, and then the personal property on $30,000 would be a savings of $12.30 for the year. That rate still has to, no matter what you set your rate at, those nickels are still the same. So our nickels equal out to, and it's misleading, people think a nickel, so they think 5 cents, but we are told what those actually equal out to be for us each year, and that's 17.1 cents when you're setting this rate. So you're left at that point in time with about 50.5 going towards general fund. The rest of it's going in there for restricted purposes for building fund. Then on the 4% increase, we are in a really good position this year because our property assessments have gone up again, which is what we figured they would. We have had a whole lot of new buildings, new neighborhoods, new houses, all of that coming up in our county itself, and then the assessments that are already on the books increased a lot. So you probably saw that. You've probably gotten assessed values last year on your tax bill showing that it probably increased a little bit, and so you should probably expect that again this year. But for us, that is good news. We can do very minimal change on that rate for the real estate in order to realize a 4% increase in that revenue. So we're talking on a $100,000 home, it's a difference of $1 higher for the year for that amount. So, you can do the math and multiply that. A $300,000 house would be $3 for the year. And then on $30,000 of personal property, it still goes down because that rate goes down. So we're talking, that's a savings of $4.20 for the year on $30,000 of personal property, which would be motor vehicles, RVs, boats, those kinds of things. So in that situation, we would have anywhere from 53.1 to 53.5 going into general fund after those nickels are taken into consideration. So a lot of the language down below that is just exactly what I just went over. It's just explaining it out there so people can see what that means for our taxpayers in our community. What does that mean for them? So then if you look at some revenue projections there, this is where I take into consideration our collection rate. Like I said, unfortunately, we've never been at a 100% collection rate. We average about 96% collection rate. So that takes this into consideration and goes on across to show you what that adjusted general fund projected revenue would look like after all of that. So if you take that into consideration compared to what we actually physically collected this past year on taxes, compensating normally comes in at lower than what, but this one is significantly lower. So we're talking about $240,000 lower. Now, obviously, collection rates could be up a little bit higher and it wouldn't be as big of a hit, but typically compensating is supposed to give you the same revenue you got the year before. But that's with the assumption that you're at a 100% collection rate both years, and that just doesn't typically happen. So if you look at that 4% increase in revenue, it's about $120,000 that we would see difference from what we actually collected last year to what I'm projecting our collections to be this current year if that rate were to be the one that you set tonight. And then I just show you the compounding, that if you take compensating as opposed to the 4% revenue increase, what that looks like. And so you're talking on this, the first year isn't a huge difference, $350,000, which, for me personally is a lot of money, but, for us as a district, that's not a whole lot of money when you look at our huge budget. But then in 20 years, that compounds to $7 million that you can never get back, you can never grow on, anything like that. So that's what my job is to always tell you that. So, I've told you numerous times I'm never going to ask you for money to go sit in a bank account somewhere and just collect interest. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to give the best education we can to our students in our school system. And I have 2 kids in our school system, and I definitely want that for them. So what are we going to do with the revenue? So obviously, if you set compensating, we're going to have to look at the budget and potentially make some cuts, because that does show a projected outcome of less revenue overall. We have significant facility needs in our district. We always have, instructional needs. Thankfully, we have some federal funds that are out there right now that we're still utilizing for that purpose, but every little bit that we can out of our general fund to also offset that learning loss that our students have had over the last couple of years. Also, you approved a nice raise for our staff back in May, which I appreciate, thank you. And I know a lot of people do, they've all told me that. But in order to help that when it comes down to our budget, increasing those tax rates help offset that raise that we gave. A big piece that I want to point out, so 4 years ago, you all as the board decided to start supplying school supplies for our students, which was a huge positive, in my opinion, for our families in our community. So over the last 4 years, including what is currently allocated for the schools for this year, that's almost $400,000 that you all have allocated out of tax revenue to go for that purpose. That, otherwise families would be spending on their kids, and typically they're going to spend more than us because we can get bulk rates on things and we don't have to pay the taxes because we're tax exempt. So that's a huge impact that you all are making setting these tax rates. And this year, thankfully, due to the way that the assessments came out and everything else, it's a very minimal impact for a homeowner. Again, $1 more over, a whole year for a $100,000 house, as opposed to the huge impact that you're making for our students every single year. I mean, we're talking almost $100,000 every single year that you all are allocating to our students for a very minimal impact on every individual in the community that is a property owner. Obviously, at that point, any other funds would go towards our contingency to really help that offset when those federal funds in, because we know that's coming. And districts that don't prepare for that now are going to be in trouble in a couple of years, and that is not going to be our district, because we are trying to make smart moves with our revenue and our expenses every day. On the next page, it shows you a comparison of the working budget, and by working budget, that's loose. The only thing I changed was revenue. I didn't change anything on the expense side. So it's just plugging in what I had on there for tax revenue and that tentative budget you all saw in May, and changed it with the revenue on here. You all will actually be reviewing and approving the working budget in September. So as soon as I have that together for you, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll be sending that out to you for you to review before that board meeting. And then down below that is just a comparison with some of our other districts around us, because we want to see realistically where we compare, and it wouldn't be a fair comparison without looking at those nickels that we have for building purposes as well. Because, you may have a district that sits next to us that their rate is much lower than ours, but they may not have as many nickels going towards building fund as we do. So they have a whole lot of money, a big portion of their tax revenue is going straight to their general fund, where we don't have that. So just keep that in mind as you're looking down through there. The basic gist is there were 57 districts that had higher tax rates than us last year, and there were 113 that had lower tax rates than us last year. And as far as motor vehicle tax, we've been at the maximum rate, along with every other district around us, for many years, as far back as I've been able to find at this point, at 49.1 cents per $100 of assessed value. So that is the option that we would like to continue with after this tonight. Any questions?
So, looking back the last 3 years, when you take in personal property and real estate, if we were to do this 70.2 and 70.6, we've actually lowered taxes
Yes.
over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and that is due, we knew, going into last year when we were looking at those assessments, I told you before I even saw them, I knew because, we have lots of property popping up, just like a lot of the communities around us do. It was, there was a big housing market, going on. We're it's slowing down now a little bit more, but, we saw values of property increase substantially. We're seeing that as we're trying to, purchase property and build things and everything. All of those prices have gone up, so that helps us in the respect of not really having to raise the tax rate in order to still see the same amount of revenue or even higher revenue. Any other questions?
Okay. Do you have any comments?
I'd just like to say that, Amber does a great job crunching these numbers and she's putting it down simple for everybody to understand, and I appreciate that. And like I said, looking at it, I know a lot of people, headlines in newspapers across the state of Kentucky a lot of times, because a lot of the school districts take 4%, they'll say, so-and-so increased taxes 4%. But that's not actually a 4% increase in your tax bill. That's 4% revenue for the school system. So it's totally different. It's kind of misleading sometimes when you see it in the paper across the state in different newspapers on school systems taking that. But we got a lot of big plans here in Mercer County, and our kids deserve as good as just like everyone else's in other districts. And to do that, you've got to have money flow to make or allow your kids to have nice things. So we've got the more I go around to our buildings and stuff, we've got aging buildings, and we've got to do either build new or remodel. And like I said, it's a great time to be in Mercer County because you're going to see a lot of great improvements. And but on that, my recommendation would be to do approve the tax rate at 70.2 for real estate, which is an increase of 0.1. And like she said, it's $1 on every 100,000 assessed value on real estate, and 70.6 for the personal property, which is a decrease of 1.4. And like I said, it's like $4.60 decrease on every $30,000 worth of personal property. And the real estate, or the motor vehicle always stays the same, usually at 49.1. So that's my recommendation to the board.
Any other questions before we vote? Okay, if not, can I have a motion for approval to set the 2022 tax rate at 70.2 for real estate, 70.6 for personal property, and 49.1 for motor vehicles?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Pruitt makes the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Yeager seconds. Roll call, please.
District 1, Amber Franceschi.
Yes.
District 2, Larry Yeager.
Yes.
District 3, Billy Montgomery.
Yes.
District 4, Cliff Pruitt.
Yes.
District 5, Randy Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Anna. Good work.
Thank you, Amber.
Bus bids, Mr. Booker.
Okay, so we said last meeting we'd take bus bids and see if anybody would like to, see what we get bids on those 7 buses that we had to surplus. We can look and come back and reconvene at the next board meeting, this one, and decide whether we wanted to sell those for that high bidder, or we can scrap them like we have in the past as well on other buses. So we got 2 sets of bids in. You see bus bid number 1 and bus bid number 2. Bus bid number 2 was the higher of the 2 bids. 5 of the ones listed there are $1,000 apiece, and the other two that aren't running currently are $700. So I asked Transportation, how much do we get on scrapping? So we get, to scrap a bus, you get $953. That's the gross. So now, I didn't know about these fees that they take. So if you drive it on the lot, they're gonna charge you per tire. So that's 6 tires, because they have to dispose of those before they crush them. So they charge you a disposal fee for tires. You have to take out the antifreeze and all the fluids, so if you do that, they charge you for that if you drive it on there. If you tow one there, of course, the towing fee that you were able to take off, let's say the tires and the fluids. So the $953 is deceiving a little bit. It really, you're not getting much after you take all those factors in. So my recommendation would be to receive Chris Cooper's high bid and sell those 5 buses listed there for $1,000 and the 2 for $700. Yes,
That's number 2.
that's bid number 2.
Questions? Okay. If not, can I have a motion to approve of bus bid number 2?
Make a motion.
Ms. Franceschi with the motion, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Montgomery, second. Roll call, sir.
District 1, Amber Franceschi.
Yes.
District 2, Larry Yeager.
Yes.
District 3, Billy Montgomery.
Yes.
District 4, Cliff Pruitt.
Yes.
District 5, Randy Phillips.
Yes. Next, Oldham County Bus Lease Agreement, Mr. Brewer.
So you all know that we bought 6 new buses last November, or we ordered 6 new buses last November, and we usually get those in at the end of May, 1st of June each year, and we're still waiting on it, even though school started. So there's a lot of school districts around the state that have not gotten their new buses yet. You know, we get the typical excuse of, well, it's COVID, you know, you got things, we can't get the parts and so forth. But the school buses, the 6 are in Oklahoma right now, and they're installing the air conditioning. That's the last update I got on that. So hopefully they'll be in the next week or 2. So in the meantime, because we have no sub buses, good friends with Jason Radford, the superintendent of Oldham County, and he had told me a while back when I was telling him about the busing situation that we've got, that he would be willing to give us, because he said, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll trade you some drivers for some buses. He said, we don't have any drivers, we have plenty of buses, but he said he would loan us 3 buses to be like sub buses in case one breaks down of ours or whatever, and that'll help us out with until we get those 6 in. So they drafted up a contract you see attached there, and they're going to charge us for a lease agreement $1 a day. Is what that contract is, just so they have something that has something in writing that's a lease. And I think that's the minimum you can do a lease for, so $1 a day. So that's what that contract is. Like I said, we'll take them back as soon as we can get our new buses in. But what I don't want is us to not having buses and us to have being a problem going to pick up kids for school, so that's why we're doing this.
So have they given us a date when we will actually get the new buses?
No, I've told Perry to call them every day, and Perry says they keep telling me they will call us when it's ready. So I think they're getting a little agitated, us calling them. But, I mean, it's just, we're in a bind, and we need those new buses. And I'm sure a lot of school systems around the state are like that, but no, to answer your question, they won't.
Tell Perry to ask her when can I expect your call, so I can make sure I'll be here.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve the lease agreement?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Montgomery makes the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Franceschi with the second. Roll call, sir.
District 1, Amber Franceschi.
Yes.
District 2, Larry Yeager.
Yes.
District 3, Billy Montgomery.
Yes.
District 4, Cliff Pruitt.
Yes.
District 5, Randy Phillips.
Yes. Okay, final action item, restaurant change orders.
So if you pull up that attachment there, these are the change orders that I like. So we need to keep these coming here, because it means they're giving us money back. It's not us paying extra money. So, but no, we had a big hole, a sinkhole on the back side of our property up by the tree. There's a big group of trees back there, and that's what's hovering around, or in the middle of that circular part of those trees. There is a sinkhole. So they were able to dispose of the rock and is that all they're putting in there, rock?
Rock and some of the suitable materials,
Okay.
suitable soils. It's all earthwork.
Yeah, earthwork. So they're gonna fill that hole up for us, which is a good thing. And it saves us $10,000 instead of them having to put it on a dump truck and take it off-site. So that's what this, I think that's the only thing on this change order is a savings of $10,000.
Is this sinkhole,
I'm sorry?
is that outside of the realm of our field?
Yes.
It is,
Yes.
just in case it comes back.
There was a sinkhole encounter that we're discussing ways to address it. It's between the two fields. This one is out past that field, wooded area.
I've seen covered up, the sinkholes in Mercer County come back before, so that's why I asked that.
So you have to treat it just right, or else they'll just come back and pop up, it'll be over.
If there is no further discussion, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Montgomery makes a motion. May I have a second, please? Second. Mr. Yeager, second. Roll call, sir.
District 1, Amber Franceschi.
Yes.
District 2, Larry Yeager.
Yes.
District 3, Billy Montgomery.
Yes.
District 4, Cliff Pruitt.
Yes.
District 5, Randy Phillips.
Yes. Okay, if nothing else further to discuss, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Mr. Montgomery with the motion. Have a second?
Second.
Mr. Pruitt, second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.